Well, good morning, fellow patriots. Boy, am I glad to see everyone here this beautiful morning. You know, this group seems to be rather bright-eyed and bushy-tailed for some reason. I did observe a rather unusual spring in your step as well, so don't know what's going on there. Now, generally, for us senior citizens, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and a noticeable spring in your step means you need to hit the head quickly. So do I need to delay the start of this meeting and allow you to move to the rear of the room, or can you hold it for an hour? Hey, welcome to the 314th consecutive Friday meeting of the East Valley Red Friday Patriots. We are glad to have a show of solidarity to honor America's deployed warfighter, so thank you very much for your support. Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So today, June 6th, is D-Day, the 81st anniversary of the World War II Allied invasion that occurred in Normandy, France. Now, D-Day was not an all-American operation. The primary Allied countries involved in D-Day landings were the U.S., the United Kingdom, and Canada. These three nations provided the largest contingents of troops by far. On D-Day, approximately 156,000 Allied troops landed on Normandy beaches. Of those, 73,000 were Americans, 62,000 were British, 21,000 Canadian troops, and a mere trickling from other allies. There were many, many casualties to mourn. But as we are all aware, a plethora of battles occurred in the 4 years leading up to D-Day, resulting in enormous numbers of both military and civilian casualties. Our strong ally, the United Kingdom, was one of the countries that was hit hard with casualties. The UK experienced a total of 451,000 deaths in World War II, including military and civilian casualties. This figure encompasses both military personnel killed in action and civilians who perished as a result of the conflict, including bombing raids. The United Kingdom's military death toll was 384,000, while civilian deaths was estimated at 67,000. So as we reflect on D-Day, we must be grateful for all of the American allies that participated in that invasion, because it is as a result of Operation Overlord that the war in Europe would soon end and casualties would quickly fade. Let me take you back on a short period of time in the early years of World War II. Specifically, 10 July through 31 October 1940, the Battle of Britain. I think you'll learn from this journey. Some of you may be familiar with the British single-seat fighter aircraft of the 1930s and 40s, which was designed and predominantly built by Hawker Aircraft Limited. It was for service in the British Royal Air Force. The plane was called the Hawker Hurricane. It was relied upon to defend against German aircraft operated by the Luftwaffe, including dogfighting with Messerschmitt 109s in multiple World War II theaters of action. The Hurricane was overshadowed in public opinion by the Supermarine Spitfire during the Battle of Britain in 1940. But the Hurricane inflicted 60% of the losses that were sustained by the Luftwaffe in the campaign and fought in all of the major theaters in the Second World War. One of the 85th Squadron Irish Royal Air Force Hurricane fighter pilots was Pilot Officer John Paddy Hemingway. He was born in Dublin, Ireland. Hemingway served in the Royal Air Force during the Second War in the Battle of Dunkirk, the Battle of Britain, the Allied invasion of Italy, and the invasion of Normandy. He was shot down 4 times during the war. For his heroics in air, then Wing Commander Hemingway was presented his most prized military decoration, the Royal Air Force Distinguished Flying Cross, a British military decoration awarded for acts of exceptional bravery and devotion to duty while flying in active operations against an enemy. He elected to remain in the service. He was ultimately promoted to group captain and retired in September 1969, having served Britain for 31 years. As of July 2018, Hemingway was one of the 9 surviving members of the Battle of Britain, affectionately referred to as the Few. The Few were the airmen of the Royal Air Force and the aviators of the Fleet Air Arm Royal Navy. They fought in the Battle of Britain in the Second World War. Now, the term the few comes from Winston Churchill's phrase, quote, "Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few." It also alludes to Shakespeare's famous speech in his play, Henry V, quote, "We few, we happy few, we band of brothers." By 2019, when he turned 100 years old, he was living in a nursing home near Dublin. And William Clark died in May of 2020, the only other remaining airman of the Battle of Britain. Hemingway became the last surviving airman of the Battle of Britain. Hemingway died earlier this year, 17 March 2025, while retired in Dublin, aged 105. The Royal Air Force called it the end of an era, with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the Prince of Wales paying homage, while Coldstream Guards honored him with music outside Buckingham Palace. Group Captain John Hemingway, the last of the few. This song, written by his son Michael, tribute to him on his 103rd birthday. It's really a very moving video, especially for war veterans and family members of those who served in war. The vocals and guitar are by Ben Glover. As you will see and hear, the video starts with the words of Winston Churchill. Its title, Hymn for an Humble Hero. You know, we may have a few RED members celebrating birthdays in the month of June. Some celebrants may be present this morning. Then there are those who will be watching this program on our YouTube channel. I know a few June celebrants, to include Mike Bickford, Les Jones, Bob Miller, Mike Scandrett, J.J. Dunn, Sharon McCarthy, Clark Kretschmer, Joe Oswald, Bob Curtis, John Johnson, Patrick Griffin, Sue Kenyon, Doug Burdick, Roger Pedersen, and Bill Dwyer. Do we have anybody here that has a birthday in June? Please stand. One here in the back. Dwayne, is that you? Are you a birthday celebrant, Dwayne? No, or are you just standing? We've got Dottie over here as well. Sue, Joe, all right, and Les. 80 today? Congratulations. In 2 weeks. Congratulations. Well, from the bottom of our pea-picking hearts, happy birthday. May I have a hoo-ah for these folks who are birthday celebrants? Happy birthday, happy birthday. Also, we would be remiss if we didn't recognize the June donut team. These guys rose early this morning to ensure we had fresh baked sweets to go along with our breakfast. And believe me, we sincerely appreciate them picking up the tab for the treats in recognition of our June birthday children. Let's give a hearty thank you to Lee Bean and Don Stevens for picking up these donuts today. Thank you, thank you. By the way, if you wish to sign up for being responsible for delivering donuts on the first Friday of one of these upcoming months, please see Jim Kenyon. Jim, raise your hand there. Please see Jim Kenyon after we dismiss. Jim is the man that handles the booking for donuts, and typically we like to have a couple of people sign up for a given month to share in the associated costs for the donuts. You know, over the course of 6 years, our Red Friday group has been privileged to have numerous members share with us their military experiences. And there have indeed been some interesting and memorable stories and experiences that were brought to light. I do know that many of you here today capitalized on your military training and the life tenets that were instilled through your military service by applying those learned skills and tenets to your civilian life and your civilian career. Leadership, resilience, adaptability, communication skills, honor, integrity, personal courage, and selfless service, to name a few. You learn to improvise, adapt, and overcome whatever life's challenges may have been thrown at you. I thought it might be enlightening for us to hear the story of how service in the armed forces prepared one of our distinguished members for a highly successful civilian career. He is a U.S. Army commissioned officer veteran who served a tour in Vietnam, returned from the war, and transitioned to a challenging yet rewarding civilian career with General Electric Company. Here to share his story about life after Uncle Sam, please welcome Philip Todd.
Just a little comment before I get into this. This song and everything was fantastic. There's a very rare part of our life right now. My wife, Dottie, over here, was born in Corpus Christi. Dick's wife, Hank, was born in Corpus Christi. So Dick and I must be related.
I hope not.
I mean, there are some states where that could be more true than in Texas. But we won't mention that. Good morning, veterans, spouses, friends, and visitors. A few weeks ago, I discussed with this group some highlights about our neighbor, our friend, and a World War II veteran, Garland James. I mentioned that on January 4th, 2023, while at our home in Gold Canyon, Garland was presented the French Legion of Honor by the French ambassador to the United States. Nancy and Mike were there at the place. So it was a very, very emotional event. So 81 years ago today, Garland landed on Normandy. I just want you to kind of take your life and think about what must have gone through all of their minds during that day, that evening on board the ship before they sailed out of England. He was very fortunate to survive, and he was with the 82nd Airborne Field Hospital until they got to the Rhine River, and then he came home. I am saddened to report that Garland passed away on May 4th. He was 103 years, 7 months, and 1 day old. May this wonderful man rest in peace. An interesting tidbit that we found when Donnie and I went to Normandy on a tour in 2016. How many of you have been on a tour at Normandy? Congratulations. It is something to see. How many of you were airborne qualified to actually jump out of a stable airplane in flight, right? They were terrible. Right. For you airborne buffs, do you know what caused the death of many American airborne servicemen on D-Day, but did not cause the death of the British airborne troops? It was the parachute harness single button release that the British had developed, allowing the canopy to be quickly and easily released upon landing, preventing them from being dragged through the high winds and, of course, into the German flooded waters or farmland, you know. The American T-5 parachute design initially suffered from not having the single point quick release, but rather 3 straps with snap fasteners connecting the paratrooper's harness to D-rings, 1 strap across the chest and 1 strap around each leg. A quick release mechanism would not be introduced en masse for American paratroopers until 1945. Of course, it was too late for Normandy. If one or more of the harness D-ring straps could not be quickly unhooked upon landing, some of the American paratroopers simply could not shed their parachutes and were died of drowning in the flooded fields. Only a short time ago, I spoke with Sergeant Major Nations and asked if I could speak today. I've been doing a lot of thinking about what I learned in the military and how it impacted my civilian life and career, as he mentioned before. Each Red Friday assembly, the sergeant proudly announces the name and service branch for each of our first-time guests. I normally sit at the same table each week, so I really don't know what most of our Red Friday members actually did in the military. I know Navy, Air Force, nor do I know how your military experience may have affected your civilian life once you were discharged. So allow me to share a little insight about myself and how my military experience impacted my life. I was born and raised on a small farm near the Canadian border of New York State. I chose to attend Norwich University, a male military school in Vermont. The most important thing I learned there was that if I got more than 12 demerits per month, I would carry my M1 rifle for an hour as I marched around the parade ground. I did not walk one tour in 4 years. Soon after entering active duty, it was actually a year after a basic training, and then I got assigned to Fort Carson, Colorado, with a very interesting assignment there. I had a platoon, and our job was to grade the roads for the tanks to drive on. Now think about that. A tank can go wherever it wants to go, and we spent hours and days grading the roads for the tanks to drive on. I arrived in Vietnam in March of 1970 at Long Binh. I remember almost nothing about that first evening. How did I get a room? What did I eat? I was told that I was scheduled for an interview by the 169th Engineer Battalion commander the next morning at 9 o'clock. They were building a road, and he needed 2 platoon leaders, and I was given command of both platoons. One platoon removed an old French-built concrete bridge in a village and replaced it with a new, wider bridge. The other platoon installed culverts. The largest culvert was 10 feet in diameter and 220 feet long. Later, I became the heavy equipment lieutenant, and the men moved over 2 million cubic yards of fill to get 38 feet over the top of that big culvert. We had a saying there. It don't mean nothing. Just do it. During the monsoon season, all of the water was bypassed in a single 48-inch culvert. We knew that that culvert was going to be their hospital, their warehouse, their living quarters, because no B-52 was going to take them out. In March 1991, I returned home from Vietnam, and after 10 days being home, I rejoined General Electric Company. It was at GE that I continued my career on industrial gas turbines in Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. I was a controls engineer at first, but soon became an installation project manager responsible for budgets, subcontractors, and quality control, safety, and employees that assembled the equipment. Dottie and I were married in March of '77, and we bought a home in Kansas City under the GI Bill. We were happy and enjoying life. However, in November of '77, I was asked to move to London as the Europe and Africa GE service manager. My territory was Norway to Nigeria, and my best customer was in Libya. I almost went to jail in Algeria. That's another story. But thank God for a flight attendant on Air France who saved me. One short story. GE was awarded a contract to supply supervision and mechanics to perform inspection on 2 turbines deep in the Sahara Desert of Libya. One site had a day and a night shift. The other site was a day shift only, but it was 55 kilometers away, and I had to cover all of those jobs. GE did not get the visas for the field engineers in time, so I escorted 27 Irish mechanics to Zelton and Raguba, Libya. After 17 days, GE engineers arrived on site, and I went home. I had no communication with my office in London or with my wife in those 17, 18 days. In October 1980, as part of a reorganization, I was thanked for accepting a new assignment in Saudi Arabia. I was not asked if I wanted the assignment. And I was going to be the field service manager for all of Saudi Arabia. The job dealt with maintenance of the fleet of GE turbines. I normally had a crew of 85 people from various countries: England, Scotland, Ireland, India, Pakistan, Philippines, Somalia, and Saudi Arabia. On December 22nd of 1983, I got a call from the manager of the R.E.D oil refinery. At the time, it was a 100,000 barrel per day oil refinery that had been running for 3 years. He wanted me to visit him at the site. I knew him because he had one of the GE turbine generators. The plant needed a shutdown and a long list of maintenance items fixed. He wanted GE Middle East Engineering Limited, Saudi Arabia, that's who I actually worked with or for, and known as GE Milsa, to do the work. GE Milsa had a Saudi partner, Sheikh Ali Tamimi Trading and Constructing Company. And they ended up, you couldn't get any work there unless you had a Saudi partner. So they got 2% of every dollar that GE got. And you can say whatever you want to. I went to his house several times, and I saw more whiskey there than I did in most bars in America. So, you know, we won't go into that. So anyway, my one Filipino finance specialist and one other American and I decided that we would do a cost-plus quotation. So naturally, we looked in the mirrors and said, how are we going to do this job? It's a refinery owned by the government of Saudi Arabia. One mistake, and the project manager would go to jail. Who would that person be? Me. Prior to January 1st, we presented our proposal. About January 8th, I got another call from the R.E.D manager, and he requested another visit, and this time he signed our contract and wanted scaffolders on site in 2 weeks. I happen to know a company in England called ICI, which was a petrochemical company, and I had a contact in GE, ask them if they had any recent retired managers that would like to do a refinery turnaround in Saudi Arabia. I had 4 people accept, and yes, they were my 4 company commanders. We divided the plant into 4 sections or zones and laid out the work. The administrative paperwork was a nightmare, and of course, government badges had to be obtained for everyone. The refinery construction camp was still available, but had to be cleaned. It had not been utilized in 3 years. I went into the mess hall and raised the lid on the big rice cooker, and there was still rice there from 3 years before. My first purchase order was for 1,000 sheets, 500 pillows, 500 blankets, and 500 towels. I required safety shoes. Almost all of the new hires had never worn socks and shoes. They wore sandals. They had no idea what to do with boxes of shoes, except open a box, take one shoe out, try it. If it didn't fit, they didn't put that shoe back in that box. They left it on the table. Tamimi Contractor is one of the reputable diversified contracting companies in the kingdom which specialize with all different activities, including gas and oil. We used their buses to transport the personnel to work. Each person had to give the driver his time card when he got on the bus. Each bus driver turned in the collected time cards and gave them back to the workers at noon. That's how we kept track of who was there, who wasn't there. Another challenge, which you had to think of everything. One of the time-consuming jobs when you're feeding people is what do you do with a knife, fork, spoon, and glass? How do you clean them? Well, I solved that problem by giving every individual a knife, fork, spoon, and a glass. And told them, if you didn't bring it back with you for the next meal, you got no food. And of course, I had water in the back of the room where they cleaned it and kept track of that. When the scaffolders arrived, I had 16 men from Thailand. And naturally, just like here, I got up and tried to tell them about the job. And I looked out and I saw 16 smiling sets of teeth and knew that they didn't understand a word I was telling them at all. I postponed the meeting and called my office back in Dammam and asked for the one and only Thai motor winder technician that we had in Saudi Arabia and asked him to be put on an airplane and flown to Riyadh that day. He was my new scaffolder foreman. The zone leader would give him instructions and he would relay the instructions to the scaffolders, of course, in their native language. We peaked out at 565 men on that job. All of the technical work was done by my turbine overhaul crew members. Cleaning and assisting as necessary was done by the new people. We worked Saturday through Thursday, 10-hour shifts. On Thursday of the first week, the plant was disassembled per our schedule. About 9 o'clock that night, some 450 plus local crew members decided to go to Riyadh to see their wives and girlfriends. Prior to departure, they were required to get in line and turn in their government badges. What did I do then? The wrong thing. I called Dottie and told her. She was terrified. I was scared so bad, However, Sunday night, they all came back but 4. And wow, the job was completed on schedule and had 0 leaks. And since then, I've worked on many new units installed on the North Slope of Alaska, in Brazil, in New York City, all over the United States. I've been very lucky. I've been in 56 foreign countries. I'm proud to say that I was trained by the military to be a project manager, and that military training strongly influenced my success in the civilian sector. You see, military service often instills life tenets, and Dick made a lot of comments about this, and I don't think I need to go through it again, but I want each of you to think about what you did. And I understand some of you were infantry, some of you were, in the Navy and took care of the ship or flying an airplane or whatever else. But you learn a lot of very important things in growing up. Really, it was outstanding. So that's what I did for a life, and still get called and still do some work. Can I do 2 minutes? Thank you, sir. Couple of funny things. At least I thought it was funny. Normally stayed at the Hyatt Nile Hotel in Cairo. And when I went to Egypt in the 77 through 80, they had the Datsun 210 cars as the car for the taxis. But they had no meters in the car. Whenever you would go from point A to point B, you'd ask, how much? And you'd get the same answer, as you like. Just as you like. Okay. Well, this one particular day, I had a GE guy from New York with me, and I thought I'd pull a little game with him. So we went to a restaurant, and on the way back, we pull up in front of the hotel, which is all glass, and the doors were open, and all the British guys were in their suits, and the women were all dressed up. And I was behind the passenger seat. I was in the back seat. And we get there, and as I'm opening the door, I say, how much? And he said, as you like. And I got out of the car, and I said, I did not like. And he bailed out of that car, come around, starts yelling at me in Arabic. Oh, my God. And all these people in this hotel, what is going on with this guy, you know? And this guy comes out all dressed up in a uniform. What's going on? What's going on? I said, I asked for the price, and he said, as you like. And I said, I did not like. Naturally, I paid. Of course, I had to pay. Corruption. Everything you did in Nigeria was faced with corruption. From the time you get off the airplane, you had to have something to give somebody because somebody's going to question your shot record or whatever. And you've always felt so happy when you checked back through customs and you had to go downstairs to identify your bag to go on an airplane to fly out of Lagos. So as you come down the escalator, you see these guys in uniform, and you go up and you find your bag, and you hand the guy your passport, and he'd open up, oh, Mr. Todd, how did you enjoy your stay in Nigeria? And of course you lie. And you said, great. Are you coming back, Mr. Oh, yes, I'm coming back. Well, my friend here will make sure this bag, the bag that you identified as your bag, gets on that airplane out there. Now, do you think maybe you can help my friend out a little bit? You knew what that meant. Huh? Thank you very much. I am going to take 1 minute of his time now or more. This is the second event I've worked with Dick. The man has never told me, but I just guess, how many hours a week does he work preparing for this? And, you know, Barry here, the rest of the people in the back, it's just an amazing thing. And there's words that he read off that he sent to me to read off, and I could tell immediately that he was not an engineer, you know? Because there were words I never heard of before. But he's always willing to help you, and this team makes you look good. And I'm so very, very proud for what they do here. But my God, what he does and how they research for all this stuff that you saw today and all the stuff before. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Philip, thank you for sharing your story. It's most interesting to understand how an individual's service in the United States Armed Forces can impact one's life after they separate from the military. Job training and skills learned from one's MOS may not really readily transfer to a chosen civilian occupation, but the tenets that were ingrained through military service are applicable in virtually every aspect of our lives. So again, Philip, thank you for sharing your story. And on behalf of this Red Friday group, I want to present you with this challenge coin as a memento of our appreciation for your support of our Red Friday mission. The coin is inscribed with the words service, integrity, loyalty, duty, respect, honor, and courage. These represent the tenets that we veterans live by. And from listening to the story of Philip's career, he never drifted from these principles. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to wrap up this morning with a little information regarding D-Day. Many of us are familiar with the events that occurred on D-Day. We've read some of the documentaries and we've seen some of the actual films that were captured on that day. We know that a tremendous amount of planning was conducted long before the operation took place. But are you aware that a dress rehearsal for the D-Day assault on Utah Beach cost the 4th Infantry Division and associated units nearly 4 times as many lives as they lost in the landing itself 5 weeks later? 4 times as many lives lost in the training exercise. The training exercise was conducted from April 22 to 25, 1944, 5 weeks before D-Day. The 25th of April that year was the date of my birth. The training exercise was codenamed Exercise Tiger. The exercise was designed to prepare assault troops and combat engineers for the landing at Utah as part of the Allied invasion of Normandy. The exercise took place in southwest England. However, it went completely off the rails due to poor communications and an unexpected attack by German E-boats, which were small but maneuverable, fast attack craft that sank and damaged LSTs, which is the landing ship tanks, filled with soldiers and sailors. At least 749 U.S. Army 4th Infantry Service members and 198 U.S. Navy personnel were killed in the training exercise. Many of them drowned after they jumped into the real chilly waters without any proper training on how to wear life preservers while wearing full field packs. By comparison, the 4th Infantry landed 21,000 soldiers at Utah Beach on D-Day, June 6, 1944, with only 197 deaths. 749 4th Infantry soldiers died in the training exercise. 197 died on Utah Beach, soldiers, and 198 sailors. Now, in preparation for D-Day, the U.S. Army planned a series of exercises around Slapton Sands, which was a village in southwestern England along the English Channel. That area was chosen because the topography resembled the Normandy beaches. The 30,000 strong civilian population was evacuated, and training began in mid-December 1943 with two major exercises planned for late April and May. The training for the Utah landing was set to begin April 22, climaxing with a beach landing 5 days later. After assembling troops and equipment, the assault forces disembarked during the night of April 26, sailing through the Lime Bay, preceded by minesweepers, as if they were crossing the channel. The Royal Navy provided destroyers and gunboats for protection. Things began to go wrong early in the morning of April 27 with a naval bombardment. General Dwight Eisenhower, the Supreme Allied Commander, believed it was important to use live ammunition so the soldiers, most of whom had never been in combat, could get used to the sounds and the smells of battle. Some of the vessels were delayed, prompting Rear Admiral Don Moon, the exercise commander, to postpone the landings by 1 hour. Some vessels didn't receive the order. They landed soldiers during the live fire assault, producing an undetermined number of casualties. Things got even worse before dawn on the following morning when 6 German E-boats slipped into the area under cover of darkness and opened fire with cannons and torpedoes. 2 LSDs packed with soldiers and sailors were sunk, 2 others heavily damaged. To make matters worse, an investigation found that British warships had actually detected the German E-boats, but the American vessels didn't get the word because of communications problems. The American and British vessels had not coordinated radio frequency. The disaster in Lime Bay sent shockwaves through the Allied command as it was preparing for the high-risk invasions of Western Europe. As a first step, radio frequencies used by the British and American navies were standardized. In addition, the Americans insisted plans be changed to provide for heavy bombing of the French port of Cherbourg, where the German E-boats were based. Publicly, however, the command clamped down on any mention of what had happened at Slapton Sands. It's reported that troops who had taken part in the exercise were threatened with court-martials if they breathed the word of the disaster. In fact, the Allied Supreme Command didn't release information on the catastrophe until August of 1944. And even then, only a brief statement was offered. By that time, the story of Slapton Sands took backseat to the heavy fighting and higher death tolls of the Normandy landings. It was not until the 1970s, 3 decades after the war, when salvagers discovered a submerged Sherman tank, that word of the disaster began to emerge. A monument to those who died was erected at Slapton Sands in 1984. If the truth be told, the best laid plans of mice and men often go astray. I do have a couple of announcements before we dismiss. We do have a scheduled guest speaker for next Friday's assembly, June 13. I think you will find this to be a very, very interesting program coming up 1 week from now. So please don't let Friday the 13th deter you from attending next week. We will dispatch people out to pull you from your rack and bring you in. So log that date on your calendars and plan to join us in support of that speaker. Also, please don't forget to meet with Jim Kenyon after dismissal if you wish to commit to sponsoring donuts for the first Friday in one of the upcoming months. Again, generally 2 members will sign up for a given month and share in the cost. And as you are exiting the building after dismissal, please leave your name badges with the greeting table. We'll take care of them and hold them until you return. As a final reminder, let us not overlook the importance of our mission, that is to keep our deployed warriors in our thoughts and prayers, and continue to demonstrate our support for these fine men and women. Enjoy your weekend.